So beer league hockey is one of the great traditions in hockey. It's a chance for people that really love the game to play the game, no matter what their age is or what their ability is.
Beer league hockey is essentially the concession that, as much as we love playing, it's the beer in the room, which is why we are here competing in this 60-minute game.
Beer league hockey is very much the lifeblood of the sport.
Beer league hockey is what it's all about. Beer league hockey is where guys have fun, where you make friends, and you just enjoy the game for what it is.
But where did it come from? And that's why I think it's important to trace beer league hockey all the way back to its roots in Syracuse in the early 1920s on the Erie Canal.
You know, when I think pioneers in hockey, I think Syracuse, whether it's first Calder Cup, whether it's first AHL outdoor game. This is a hockey team and a hockey community that prides itself in being first.
So the Erie Canal had a transformative effect on America, New York State, and Syracuse in general. It's a 363-long artificial waterway connecting Lake Erie and the Great Lakes to the Hudson River, and therefore the Atlantic Ocean. Greenway's was a canal-side brewery founded by English immigrant John Greenway in 1852, and it soon became Syracuse's largest brewery, or one of its largest breweries. This location has an incredible brewing history. The first brewery in Syracuse of Davenport and Morey was also on the same location. Then it became the home of Greenway's, and starting in 2019, it became the home of Talking Cursive Brewing Company. And even in their basement today, you can still see remnants of the old canal wall.
So we had some leakage going down into the basement that we were concerned about, so we went down there and we found this hockey equipment. So we decided, it's definitely vintage, older equipment, so we took that over to the Erie Canal Museum and to see what they could find out about it.
So Talking Cursive found some hockey equipment in their basement, and they brought it over to us to see what we thought of it. We did some comparative analysis and figured out that the equipment was contemporary to what hockey players in the 20s would have used. And then we found very faintly a name written on some of the equipment. And that name matched up to some journals that had been donated to us a few years back.
We're amazed to discover that there was a Greenway's hockey team that would play on the canals. They went by the Canal Mules.
So before we had steam or engine-powered boats, canal boats were powered with animals. Horses were sometimes used, but mules were preferred.
And mules are known for their stubbornness or their intelligence.
They wouldn't drink the canal water because they knew it was dirty. Similarly, the people who worked at Greenway's didn't drink water because they preferred beer, and thus they decided to tap into the stubborn nature of the mules and name themselves the Canal Mules. From our research, it looks like the Canal Mules were the very first beer league hockey team.
Now, I know we pay a lot of attention to, what we call the founding family of hockey, and that's the Patricks, Lester and Frank Patrick. They were the ones in the old Pacific Coast League who revolutionized the game, changed the game, the effects of which we still feel to this day in the game that you're going to watch today. We still look back and say, the Patricks did this, the Patricks did that. But I'll tell you what, I'll put the Canal Mules up against the Patrick family any day of the week.
Growing up in Toronto, we saw a lot of the Buffalo news stations when I was a kid, and you would also always hear about some of the teams, the legendary teams in New York history, and they would always talk about one of the greatest hockey performances since the Syracuse Canal Mules. And I would sit there and I would look at my television. You're like a 7 or 8 year old kid and you're hearing about the Syracuse Canal Mules. That's a fantastic name. So obviously there was a huge fascination when I was young about the Syracuse Canal Mules, the best name in hockey.
Well, as everyone knows, as a hockey broadcaster, diligent preparation and exhaustive research is something that must be done for excellent broadcasting. So when I came to Syracuse to work for the Crunch, I looked into hockey history here in the mighty Salt City, learned about the Firebirds, the Warriors, how they filmed Slapshot here, even going back to the very first Calder Cup champions, the Syracuse Stars. But there was always this inkling, this indication of some other hockey origin here in Syracuse. And you heard about this team that was connected to the canal somehow. And then there it is, the Canal Mules.
Well, when we were looking for a farm team for the Columbus Blue Jackets, an affiliate team with the Columbus Blue Jackets to develop our young players and prospects, we looked at a city that had amazing hockey history. And of course, that goes back to the Syracuse Canal Mules.
I think one of the true legacies of the Canal Mules is that it was the first time anyone really thought to have beer at an outdoor hockey game. And keep in mind, this predated the NHL stealing the idea for the Winter Classic 88 years later.
And of course, anyone who's even spent a day in hockey knows it all started with the Syracuse Canal Mules, a bunch of absolute legends.
The Syracuse Canal Mules have a very special place in hockey history. It's amazing how they've cultivated hockey throughout the state of New York.
In 1923, the section of canal that remained in Syracuse was filled in, and because of this, the Canal Mules couldn't play on the canal any longer. We imagine that they tried to move their team to a different body of water for a little while, but they largely disappear from the historical record.
What a shame that the Canal Mules had been lost to history for so long. And huge credit to the Crunch, who have a history of celebrating hockey history. Remember what they did in the 90s, celebrating the Syracuse Stars, brought those guys back to lift the Calder Cup? But this takes the cake. For the Syracuse Crunch to bring back the true history of hockey's start in Syracuse, the Canal Mules have deserved this, and kudos to the Crunch for making it happen.
As someone that's followed hockey his entire life and kind of considers himself an amateur hockey historian, the Canal Mules play a huge piece in hockey history, albeit one that may have been lost to history. But here's the deal. Now that you know about the Canal Mules, it's your responsibility and obligation to spread the word. We have a deal, right?